afternoon, everybody. Hey, Wade Boyette is with us today. This is Law 2020. Show's been on for a few months now. The reaction has been phenomenal throughout the entire Central Florida area. Law 2020 opens up the phones to you for your legal questions. We always have one topic that we kind of dwell on, but we're more than willing to help you out on a lot of fronts. We have Josh taking the phone calls right now, and you can text us, and there's 2 or 3 ways you can join the show. Let's kind of go over that. Law 2020 is brought to you by your friends at the offices of the BCN Law Firm throughout Central Florida. They're ready to help you out. And one of the cool things is when you sit down and talk to the people that are associates of the BCN Law Firm, you're going to find out that they are so plugged into Central Florida. They have been here. They're into the community. If there's a fundraiser going on, if there's something happening, they're probably involved right up to the shoulders in it to help this community. They give back every single day. It's a great law firm. BCN Law Firm is accessible during the week at 855-LAW-2020. 855-LAW-2020. If you want to join the show today, text us at 21232. And how do you do that? On your smartphone, your smart device, you go to messaging, right? Up there where it says recipient or address, just put in the 5 numbers, 21232. You don't have to have a name or a contact or any other phone numbers or Wade Boyette or anything like that. Sometimes we give out Josh's social security number, but that's just to keep him on top of his game. But anyway, 21232, 21232 is the number. You put that in there. Then down in the message, you've got about 160 characters. And if you need to send us more than one text, say part 2 and go with more. Part 3, go with more, because we want you to get the whole question out, okay? So you could call us at 855-297-9696, text us at 21232, or go to the all-new News 96.5 app, and right on there, there is a link that says Call Radio Station. We can do that. Or there's also a link that says Open Mic, and all you do is press on that, and you make your own little recording, and guess what? That pops up right here on our computer. So there's a million ways for you to participate. Divorce, prenups, post-nups, and what happens after divorce in this fair state of Florida, where if you've been married for a number of years, you literally are going to be paying that ex-spouse of yours forever. Well, let's talk about all of this. You got a prenuptial. What would happen if you even brought up a prenup in your relationship? Post-nuptials, can you do it later? What needs to be considered, and what are some of the things you need to be thinking about? If you're going through a divorce, too, and you need an opinion on something, give us a call right now, and the number again is 855-297-9696. By way of introduction, Wade, I guess it's been much in our lifetime that this whole prenup thing was discovered. I think it was, what was her name? Martha Mitchelson or something like that, way back in the day, that got the big settlement from the movie star because she said, we've got a document. Right. Nobody had ever heard of it before.
You know, and one of the biggest cases, Steven Spielberg.
There you go.
With his wife, had his prenup overturned. They call it the $1 million prenup, where he entered a prenup on a napkin pretty much. And, when they got divorced, that was thrown out. But, yeah, there's been several high-profile cases with people challenging prenups, which is a pretty hard thing to do. But you see prenups challenged in the news, and usually it deals with high-net-worth individuals.
Mm-hmm. But are there even people, what about a couple right here in Central Florida, and they're thinking about getting married, and maybe she's got a little something, or she may have an inheritance coming down the pike sometime, or vice versa, or maybe the two of them are just trying to protect anything in their lives. Do you have people coming to you now saying, the first time we talked about it, everybody went home mad, and, we made up next day, but maybe we need to get some things written down?
Absolutely. It's amazing. Prenups are up about 77% over the last 5 years. There's been a substantial increase in the number of people who are wanting to do prenups. And what it is where it used to be mainly the husband would come to the attorney and ask for the prenup. Now it's both the husband and the wife. You have a lot of ladies out there who have a substantial net worth. They're in the career force. They have great jobs. They've got their retirement accounts, or they may have been divorced and they have assets they want to protect. So you have both spouses now coming in looking at getting prenups done. And they understand once you get married, there's certain rights that your spouse has that are constitutional rights under the state of Florida.
Well, I would think, too, that there would probably be is there a bigger need for second and third marriages just because of all the multiple complications like kids from the first marriage, joint kids from the second marriage, assets that have been, added up over the year, businesses and investments and that sort of thing?
Exactly. That's where it usually comes up. When two young families, two young people are getting married, they're both starting out on the same footing usually. They're both striving to build their finances together, and there really isn't a need for a prenup. It's usually the second marriages where there's blended families, where one spouse is wanting to protect their children or their family in the case the marriage doesn't work out. Usually what I see, and especially with a lot of my older clients, is large 401ks, large IRAs that they're bringing into the marriage, and they need to make sure those assets are protected because once you get married, there are certain rights that spouses have to those assets.
Mm-hmm. So when somebody's thinking about this, one of the first things that I'd like to establish is your thoughts on somebody who just says, well, I heard him talking about prenups and post-nups and all this, so honey, let's just go online and find ourselves a form, or let's write out 436, and there's that big box office supply store. Surely they've got something we could use.
Right. As an attorney who drafts documents and takes pride in the work that we do, I usually don't encourage that. And the reason is there's a lot of thought that goes into and ideas and decisions that need to be made, not just drafting the document. And, you have both the legal element, but you also have the human element that you have to deal with. And it's usually the human element that you have to get over first before you can deal with the legal issues.
I'm sure there's been times in your office, Wade, as much as you help Central Floridians, where a couple comes in and they say, well, the only items we need to do are A, B, and C. And you say, well, without naming names, let me tell you about a couple that we handled just about 9 years ago that only considered A, B, and C, but they didn't consider D, E, F, G. And guess what happened? There was a problem.
We do that often. And, what happens where we get involved occasionally is where the families who did go, husband or wife, depending on what side we're representing, went to that store, bought the form, comes into the office, and unfortunately it's being contested. And if we're on the side, if we're the attorneys contesting the document, we love it because usually we can punch holes in it because there are certain things that weren't done. A lot of times one of the easiest ways to contest a prenuptial agreement are spouses will wait until the last minute to bring it up. And the last thing you want to do is bring up the creation of a prenuptial agreement a week or a couple of days prior to getting married, because generally then it puts the other spouse or the future spouse under duress when it comes to signing it. So a lot of pressure going on. And one of the easiest ways to attack a prenuptial agreement is through duress.
Well, one of the first questions that may come up is, if we as a couple want to come, can you represent a couple or do you have to represent one or the other?
It's encouraged that both individuals have separate attorneys. And in fact, a lot of times they will come in to our office together, and then we usually tell them that we can represent one of them, and then they need to go and get separate counsel. The other spouse needs to go get their independent counsel, because whenever those things are challenged, it's good if for both sides that they both were completely honest, full disclosure, and represented by an attorney.
Are the laws of divorce and property ownership and homestead and that sort of thing pretty universal? Or let me ask you this. If somebody moves here, they had a prenup in Michigan, and I'm not saying Michigan, right. I'm using that hypothetically, folks. I'm saying any state, and they move to Florida, should they have those documents reviewed to make sure that that agrees with the new home they bought here, the homestead they entered into, all that sort of thing?
Absolutely. A lot of states do not have some of the laws that Florida has. For example, Florida is pretty lenient when it comes to homestead rights. Whenever you get married, a spouse acquires certain rights under Article 4 of our Constitution here in Florida to rights into a homestead. You cannot, once you get married, you cannot disinherit your spouse, nor can you deed the property away from your spouse without your spouse's consent. And so there are certain rights like elective share rights and other things that your spouse acquires the moment you get married. And people aren't aware of those, and not all states have those rules.
Mm-hmm. And it often comes up, and I know you and I've talked about this off the air, about the kids that'll come to Florida and go, well, Wade, Dad left me the house out in Kings Ridge. Why can't I have it today? And you have to explain, well, because your mother has a life estate in there.
Correct. Or, Dad promised me the house. I hear that a lot.
Is that right?
I met with Dad several days prior to him passing, or I met with him weeks before, and he promised that I would get X. And unfortunately, there isn't an estate planning document, or things don't work out the way that they were promised, and then we have a bad situation.
So is that also a good time, and I'm thinking again hypothetically, that I come to see you about signing a prenup? Is that also a good time for me to say, Wade, let's kind of look at the assets that we're already talking about on the desk here, and let's start the first operation of my will?
Usually when I'm meeting a individual that is anticipating getting married, I'll sit down with them. We'll look at their current estate planning documents, and then we'll address them both prior to them getting married. And then I encourage, a week or 2 months after they, get back off their honeymoon and things settle down, then we look at their new estate planning, because we want to both integrate the prenuptial agreement that's prepared and integrate their current estate planning meaning not just their will, but all the beneficiary designations of their life insurance policy, the retirement accounts, annuities, and other assets they may have.
There you go. All right, we are taking your calls right now. If you want to join the program, we'd love to have your questions, and there's no silly question when it comes to this type of law. Any other law question you have, you can call in as well, and you don't have to use your real name today. Use the name Josh. All right? 855-297-9696, 855-297-9696, or text us at 21232. That's 21232. Don't forget, tomorrow morning, bright and early, 5 o'clock, the only all-news morning show in Orlando gets you off to work on time with up-to-date traffic, the news, the weather, and more with my friend Joe Kelly, all coming up tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock right here on News 96.5. Hey, we're back. Yes, indeed, with a special offer for you. If you are the first couple of callers today, let's get that special offer on the table, because one of the things I mentioned at the top of the program, if you'll remember, was I talked about how community involved the BCN law firm is, how community involved they are, how many people they help each and every day, and how many community organizations they get behind. So we've got kind of a special offer today if you're the first couple of callers, and what would that be?
Rob, what we're going to do is every week here on the show, as a way to say thank you to some of our listeners who do work in the public service industry, who are police officers, nurses, firemen, who have served in the military. We're going to pick one group, every week, and the first couple of callers that call in, offer them a free will, power of attorney, healthcare power, and a living will to help their family out. This week, I wasn't here last week. Brian was gracious enough to sit in for me where I could take a little vacation. We're going to offer anyone who is a veteran in the military, the chance to get some estate planning done, and for them to sit down with us and get a free will, healthcare power, living will, and a durable power of attorney.
That is great. Now, we're talking about prenuptials and postnuptials, but this is a real off-the-wall question. This could be the last day I produce your show. You're probably, Rob, where are you coming from? In our lifetime, we've seen a whole new preponderance of people just moving in together. I mean, they have. I never could figure that out. Right. They buy a house together and they're not married. And I'm not the big, the big religious guy, but I'm saying there's a business transaction going on here. And what's going to happen when somebody gets mad at somebody? So are there agreements that can be drawn up between just cohabitants, so to speak?
There's definitely agreements that can be drawn up. And, usually it happens when you start commingling assets or you start acquiring property together. I see this, and I discourage, if, two people who are just moving in, to acquire property together. I always recommend that one or the other buy the property, because once you start buying property together, if there is a split up, you have a different set of rules. You're a partnership like any other business partnership, and you're going to have to deal with those assets accordingly.
Ouch. All right. This is not related, but we do want to get to a text we have. Is there any time an exempt employee, and you'll need to explain to our people what an exempt employee is, because most people in Florida have no concept of that. If there is any time an exempt employee in Florida is eligible for overtime pay?
Yeah, Rob, I'm not an employment law attorney, but let me answer that the best
Sure,
way I can.
buddy.
Exempt employee generally means someone who is a salaried employee, and I'm giving you a broad definition. For example, even if you work for someone and you're not an hourly employee, you're a salaried employee, and they define who can and cannot be a salaried employee, you would be considered an exempt employee. And a lot of salaried employees are not 9-to-5 employees. For example, an attorney in my office, I hope he's going to work more than 9-to-5. They're not going to be 40-hour employees, and I'm not required to pay them overtime. However, my staff, my secretaries, they are subject to overtime pay. So if they work more than 40 hours a week, I would pay them overtime.
Okay, very good. And there are, as Wade pointed out, there are very succinct details in what makes an exempt employee. You might want to check with that, because there are some cases that have been presented where the person says, yeah, I'm on salary, but I don't have the right to do this, this, and this, therefore I don't really qualify. So it's kind of a muddy water out there. You need to probably check each individual circumstance. If you want to text us with any legal question, you don't have to use your real name. 21232 is what you're putting in the recipient line. You want to call us, so you don't have to use your name either, but we will, after the call, get your contact information if you're one of the first two, because we want to give you some free services from the BCN Law firm. And what was the qualification today?
Today, military.
Military today. All right. 855-297-9696, 855-297-9696. And by way of saying that, we do want to compliment and give a big thumbs up to our producer today, Josh, who will be leaving us in a couple of weeks to go get in the military and defend us in the Air Force. How cool is that?
That is great.
All right, very good. Let's talk about, we've talked about prenups. I've never heard the phrase post-nup. What's that all about?
Well, there are certain situations, after a couple was married, where they may want to sit down, one spouse or the other will sit down and want to enter into a contractual arrangement with their spouse to dealing with assets that came up after the marriage. I'll give you a good example. I have two individuals who come into my office and are wanting to establish a business together. And there's going to be a lot of capital put into that business, and both of the business partners are comfortable with each other. They're not comfortable with the potential of the spouse being one of their partners. So they'll come in and say, we love the partnership agreement, we're comfortable with it, but if anything happens to you and your spouse, I do not want your spouse to be one of my partners. So what they'll do is they'll do a post-nuptial agreement applying specifically to that situation. The post-nuptial agreement will say, in the event of the divorce, I hereby waive my interest in that business. And so it gives the partner the comfort that they want, and it creates a contractual agreement up front.
All right, a related story in the national news.
Yes.
Does Donald Sterling have to sign a power of attorney to his wife to make this sale go through? And if he doesn't, is she stuck?
I think it's going to be a lot more than just a power of attorney that he's going to have to sign. So
that's going to be very interesting to see how it comes out. All right, if you have questions about a prenuptial agreement, a post-nuptial agreement, or if you have questions about spousal support, child support, things that happen along the way, and what happens when life changes come about, if you are the payee or the payor of money in a divorce settlement. What goes on as times change? I asked Wade specifically. We got a lot of people out there, baby boomers, that are getting ready to retire. Well, if they're supposed to be paying a former spouse $2,000 a month, what's going to happen? Do they have to work at Walmart as a greeter the rest of their life just to make sure they're up to that? We'll find out when we come back. You're listening to the Law 2020 show, brought to you by the BCN Law firm right here in Central Florida. I'll give you contact information when you get back. Hey, welcome back. This is our lengthy segment that we do right here on every Ask the Expert show. We're got about 15 or 20 minutes to spend together. So let's use that time wisely. 855-297-9696 or text us at 21232. And if you have the all-new News 96.5 app brought to you by burnfatorlando.com, you will be able to just press a button and you can go to open mic and just, hey, got a question, and put that, and we'll put it on the air. Or you could, there is a button on there, instant contact, and it'll contact the station immediately, so you don't have to input a number. We don't dial anymore, but we input. All right, we talked about prenups, post-nups, and what happens post-divorce to a lot of couples. Also, I do want to give you the contact information on the BCN Law Firm. It is 352-394-2103 or 855-LAW-2020, just like the song says, 855-LAW-2020, or you could go to bcnlawfirm.com. Okay, what happens after a divorce as years go by and things change between two people?
Well, when a couple gets divorced, a lot of times, they're not in their right state of mind. They've been going through a lot of stress. If you've gone through a divorce, you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's one of the toughest things to go through, and they don't think about all the details. And one of the biggest things that I see is, they think about. They'll usually come in and say, Wade, I want to change my estate planning documents. I need to change that will, or I need to remove her from my power of attorney, my health care power. And what they don't realize is, that's pretty much done automatically under state law. What they forget to do is there's a lot of contractual arrangements, such as a 401k plan, an IRA. There's over, I think they $7.5 trillion Americans own in IRAs, $7 trillion in 401k. When you look at the 401ks, the IRAs, and you look at home ownership, that's 80% of the majority of Americans' assets, either retirement plans or homestead assets. And what they don't do is, they won't go and take their ex-spouse's names off their real estate deed. So they're still in joint ownership. And, the tenants by the entirety can sever, but there's issues. Also, the biggest thing that I see is the contracts, IRAs, 401ks, life insurance policies. They don't go and remove their spouse off of those. They don't change their beneficiary designation. And I see that happen, more often than not. One spouse will die. They'll have forgot about a life insurance policy they acquired early on in the marriage 15 years ago. And the kids get upset because the ex-spouse or the new spouse gets upset because the new spouse ends up getting a substantial sum of money. Wow. So how many years, or should it be every year, that somebody just stops in for a Wade Boyette, a Law 2020 tune-up? I usually encourage every 2 or 3 years, unless there's a substantial life change, such as marriage or divorce. Then they'll come in and they'll make change, or they have another child, or they inherit money or come into a sum of money. Then I encourage them to stop in. Other than that, if there's no life change, if things are pretty status quo, there's no reason to come in and change your documents unless your intent under the documents have changed.
How about if their kids, one of their sons or daughters, has gone through a major divorce, and those people are named in a will from the father, in this case the grandfather? Should he be mindful of that?
Well, where they should be mindful, and I see this happen a lot, is a parent has named their children, or a grandparent has named their grandchildren in an estate planning document, and they have a grandchild or a child that is going through a rocky marriage. And what I encourage them to do is there's certain things that we can do in their estate planning documents that protects their child or grandchild in the event a divorce occurs after they inherit the assets.
All right, very good. Do you have any questions for Wade at this point? Yeah, you can put the lawyer on the stand. There you go. You can just call us at 855-297-9696, 855-297-9696, or you could text us at 21232, 21232. In the case of Florida, where we are one of the few states that has this mandatory, what we call when you're sitting in my seat today, life sentence. But if you've oftentimes judges had the discretion, and I guess now it's pretty much the rule, 20 years post 20-year divorce, you've got to pay that lady for the rest of your life.
It's more likely than not that the spouse is going to end up with permanent alimony, which I agree with you is a financial obligation for the rest of your life unless the spouse gets remarried. And why in the world would a spouse ever get remarried if they have an annuity for life?
Well, that's what I'm saying. And, but the problem is the law, I don't think, really took into consideration what happens when the husband or the wife, whoever's paying it, I'm not going to get, pejorative on this, but what happens when they decide it's time to retire, get Social Security? Is that right, taken away from them just because financially they can't?
I mean, right, I don't agree with it. I'm not a proponent of permanent alimony. I do believe that alimony should be awarded in certain cases, but permanent alimony, what it does is now it makes one spouse, whether it's the husband or wife, because both the husband and wives have to pay alimony. It's not just one way.
Right.
It could go either way. The paying party is really, they're a slave for life. They, if they decide 20 years from now they want to retire or slow down, or, if there are reasons why they would like to make career changes, they're not going to be able to. They're stuck to that contract.
So they're really stuck in the thing. So have you ever had occasion to be familiar with anybody who's filed for a modification?
Absolutely. We have clients that on a regular basis file to modify their alimony, modify their child support. So absolutely, if it gets to that situation where it is a financial burden, you can always petition the court to try to have your alimony modified.
Okay, we are taking your phone calls right now at 855-297-9696, 855-297-9696, and you don't have to use your real name. We have Janet on the line. Janet, how can we help you?
Hi. We have, and we sold the assets of the business on Wednesday. We signed a closing agreement and we received the cashier's check. And yesterday we found out that the lady who had purchased the business has cancelled the cashier's checks. She has out of the deal, leaving us with nothing. We legally bound by this document, and do they actually own it?
Janet, and you broke up a little. Y'all closed on Wednesday. You received payment from the buyer, and then after the closing, what happened then?
Well, the business we own is a hair salon. We met them Wednesday morning. We met at the bank. We signed the papers, and she gave us 2 cashier's checks.
Okay.
After I went back to my salon, she told me to tell everybody that she bought it. She was going to come in and meet everyone, which I did. I was doing that. And yesterday, she told me she changed her mind and she'd cancelled the cashier's check and we should shred the contract.
Okay, unfortunately, she doesn't have a right to do that. If you have a contract with her and she went to closing, she gave you cashier's checks, it's not up to her to just cancel or those cashier's checks. So
that's what we thought. Yeah. I mean, my lease is actually up as from today, yesterday. Yeah. So this is why we were worried because we cannot renew our lease.
Well, Janet, there's definitely some repercussions to her for doing what she did. She has breached an agreement that she had with you. If you would, I'll be in the office early in the morning. You're more than welcome to give me a call, and I can sit down and go over exactly what you can and should do in that situation.
Okay, that would be great because we have nothing now. We don't really have a business because she signed it, but I'm worried because the lease, the landlord where we leased the business said that if anything's not sorted, then we have to remove all our things in there, but it's not legally ours.
Correct. What she's done is she's caused you damages by, as a result of her actions. So, you should not be harmed by her just wanting at the last minute or really after the closing to decide that she has buyer's remorse and wants to get out of the deal.
Okay. Okay, that would be great. Thank you for your help.
You're welcome. And if, like I said, give me a call tomorrow at the office, and I'll be more than willing to sit down with you, and let's just walk through it and see if there's something you want to do.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Boy, first of all, she needs to rekindle those funds, and second of all, somebody better sit down with the landlord, figure out what's going to happen. All right, we are taking your calls right now. There is a very, very important call, and when that lady tomorrow morning gets up, she will have the help of the BCN Law Firm. 855-297-9696. 855-297-9696 is the number to call. You do not have to use your real name when you call. And if you'd like to text us, 21232 with any legal question that you've got, it doesn't necessarily have to be about divorce. It could be about any legal matter that you have found yourself all messed up in. So give us a buzz, and you could give us a call right now at 855-297-9696 or text us at 21232. 21232. We're going to take a break for the 3 big things you need to know. We'll be back. Hey, we're 9 minutes away from news, traffic, and weather from our 24-hour newsroom. We have Dave Walden there, veteran newsman in Central Florida. He'll bring you all the news. On top of it, international, national, and, of course, our local partners. And we have got Joe on the line. Joe out of St. Cloud, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, we kind of got a situation. We bought a car on Tuesday at a dealer, and we decided we don't want the car. So we went back on Friday and told them we didn't want the car anymore. And they told us we had to keep it.
Yeah, Joe, did you sign all the paperwork, sign the financing agreements, or did you?
We did all the paperwork and everything.
So you did all the paperwork. Unfortunately, there's nothing that I know that I can do to help you there. You know, a lot of the dealerships, and you check on that individual dealership, have programs where you can drive it for a certain number of days or certain number of miles, and if you're unsatisfied with the car, can take it back. Check and see what the policy is of that dealership.
Yeah, we asked them that, and they said they didn't have a policy, but they said if we wanted to swap it for a different car that was either the same price or more, but we just don't want the car at all.
Oh, you just don't want that vehicle or any other vehicle at this time.
Yeah, we don't. We maybe got a little bit over our head and are concerned whether will we actually be able to continue to afford the vehicle.
Yeah, and could you sell the vehicle? And probably not because of the initial depreciation. You know, that'd be the only thing that I know. But other than that, you know, hopefully it works out for you, and you can make the payments and things over time work out for you.
So one more question. I mean, like we had somebody tell us that you have like a 10-day right to take it back or something. Is that not the case?
I don't know of a 10-day right you have to take an automobile back after you purchase it.
Okay, though. Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
I always heard the scenario on some TV news and stuff that if you go to the dealer, you went with intent. Now, right. Different if somebody comes to you and tries to sell you a vacuum cleaner at your house.
Correct.
That there may be, some recourse.
There are certain rights of rescission for certain products.
Yeah. Now, John, you are a military veteran, so you do qualify for an offer from Wade Boyette, which is what again, Wade?
A free will, durable power of attorney, healthcare power, and living will if John needs those done.
All right, John, what is your question for Attorney Wade Boyette of the BCN Law Firm right here in Central Florida?
I spent 20 years in the military, retired. My wife, my ex-wife, was married to me for 29 years. She divorced me. She had a romantic relationship with a lawyer who was very derogatory, very abusive when he spoke with me in dealings. My lawyer sat back and just watched the whole thing. I got fed up with it and said, go ahead and take the retirement because that's what she wanted, was 100% of my retirement. We sold the house. She got all the proceeds from the house. She got 100% of my retirement, and pretty much left me in debt. My credit's straight now, but I'm remarried now. But I'm trying to find out, is there a way that I can go back and revisit this because from what I understand in Florida, she's only entitled to 50% of my retirement.
Well, if you would have hired an attorney and y'all would have gone through this, she more than likely, she would not have gotten 100% of your retirement check. Did you agree to that in the marital settlement agreement?
Yeah, this was during mediation. It was in her lawyer's office, and like I said, they were very abusive, very derogatory. And the mediator even spoke up and said that the judge that we were going to go before had the attention span of a rock. So
do you remember signing something called a qualified domestic relations order? You'll see the abbreviation QUADRO regarding your military account.
What is that?
That's usually the document that's signed after the divorce, or it could be part of the divorce, that gives your spouse the rights to your retirement check.
No, I don't believe we did.
Okay,
I send my retirement check to her every month.
You do send it to her.
Yeah, it goes in my account and I send it to her. Because when I think when we went before the Navy Personnel Office, they told me that they could not do that, give her 100%. They can only sign over 50%.
That's right. You would have to do a QUADRO for her to have the rights to any of your retirement account. So let me ask you this, John. Who's paying the income tax on your retirement account that you receive every month?
She is.
Okay, yes. So there must be a QUADRO for her to have to pay the income tax, because if you're receiving
my return that she gets that money.
Yeah, it usually takes more than just putting a statement on your return that is her responsibility. So there must be a QUADRO. I'd love to sit down with you again and just go through it. Bring in your marital settlement agreement and any documents, and we can request and see if there is a QUADRO out there, and see if we can't help you get back any of those retirement funds.
Okay. And your number to your office?
Is 352. I'm gonna give you two numbers: 352 394 2103 or 855 Law 2020.
Law 2020. All right. Thank you very much. I'll give you a call tomorrow.
You're welcome. And also, if you want those estate planning documents, please come in. We can take care of those at the exact same time.
All right. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thanks, John.
Have a good day.
You too.
All right, very good. So we've talked about prenups and we've talked about post-nups and also post-divorce, some of the things that come up. Things change sometimes, and documents have to be reread, documents have to be rewritten. And I know that there are just terrible stories out there. Before the show, off the air, you and I were talking about a couple. And people, I'm going to pose the question, do a lot of times people just think, well, I don't have enough to even worry about going to an attorney. Why should I go to an attorney when we don't have anything? And then it turns out, ouch.
Oh, yeah. And I see that. Most people, when they think prenups or postnups, they think about the wealthy or people who have substantial assets. And I get humored by this because I have people come in and they want prenups or postnups for various reasons. And, before the show, I was playing around on the internet looking at some of the funniest things that people have put in prenups. And you can address anything in prenup. People, as on the internet, I was reading where one spouse had a prenup created that said that their husband could only watch one football game every Sunday. Or they have a prenup agreement that says, if you talk negatively about my in-laws, it's going to cost you X number of dollars per insult. I mean, it was funny reading some of the things that you can draft into a prenuptial agreement. So it's just not financial arrangements that you can put in the prenup. It's other things. One of the key things that I see in a prenuptial agreement are infidelity clauses that say, what's ours is, I have no problem going into this marriage and waiving my rights. However, if there's infidelity, all things are off.
Is that mainly because in the state of Florida it's a no-fault state?
Absolutely.
Other states you can prove adultery, you can prove sex outside of marriage, and you're gonna get some damages. Right. But in Florida, that judge won't even look up.
It's not relevant. So so I'll have spouses that come in and say, you know what, I want to draft a prenuptial agreement that say, our rights are whatever he has is his, unless, there's infidelity. And if there's infidelity, then, all games are off, and, I want X. And they'll draft what she's entitled to.
And last week when Heath was on here, we were talking about the fact that BCN Law Firm is a multifaceted law firm. There are a lot of experts under one roof.
Correct. We have, 10 attorneys now, hopefully growing even more, and we cover every area of the law other than some intellectual property areas and immigration, and we refer that out. We have some close attorneys that we work with in those areas. Other than that, we can handle it, and hopefully we'll be covering those areas soon.
And I really like the fact that of all the years I've been in Florida, I've heard of Wade, and I've had the honor of meeting him and working with him this year. But, I think it really helps when you have an attorney's firm that cares, that's involved in the community, but also knows the way the courts go and also knows the way things flow around here, because every part of the country is a little bit different, and each district and each court is a little bit different. Good to know the lay of the land, my friend. Have a good week.
Great weekend.
All right, see y'all later.